And yeah, I just don't want to be left by having to either check call or check raise this turn with as much equity as we have. It's just with this kind of stack depth and his kind of wide range. I mean, what am I going to do when I either get there or miss? And in both situations, it feels probably a bit ugly to lead. I'm not sure. So yeah, I decided to lead the turn and barrel certain rivers. Certainly anything that improves me, other than probably a jack, and maybe bluff a few kind of board pairing cards also, but I'm not sure. But I think that this turn card gets a lot of fold equity, and yeah, we've obviously got a lot of equity also if we do get called. So that's good. Here we open the queens, and we get 3-bet to 5.4 with 20x remaining. I don't think he ever thinks I will flat. I just don't think he thinks I'll flat king queen suited here or something. Like the most nice hand to flat, I don't think he thinks I would flat with, so there's no real point in trapping. So I just stick it in and hope that he had an induce, and he did. But it's a better induce than the queens. Sadly for us, we lose a decent sized pot. Here I just limped the 7-9 off. I think a lot of people are fairly happy to be 3-betting opens and defending opens and floating flops, and sometimes with these kind of like playable hand, I like to just limp and kind of see if people are going to be super aggressive. I think a lot of the time people are pretty happy to just take a flop in position, and it kind of just keeps, maybe have a kind of, not that raise folding or raise trying to 4-bet is necessarily high variance, but at least maybe gives us a chance at seeing a flop with a decent hand. We turn pretty good and lead. Pretty ugly river, and I think when he checks back this flop, he tends to have something, and it's kind of, can we make him fold on average a 6? And I don't think we do, considering we haven't raised. I think that we're too deep to be trying to have a kind of hand that we'd be limp re-raising. I think any value hand I would probably be opening 40x effective. So yeah, we can't rep too many aces. I think we would have been raising those. So yeah, and are we going for thin value with a king? That doesn't make too much sense, unless we have something like king 8. So yeah, I don't think I really can have too much by the end, by this river, and we just, or at least something that can make him fold what seems to be probably on average something like a 6, so we just give it up. Maybe the negative side of just limping the small blind, but it's all good. So here we flat the cutoff open queen jack suited, and we get 3-bet from this guy. Here are his stats, so seems fairly competent. 3-bet buttons and cutoffs fairly high, squeezing 4% from 27 opportunities. So not gone crazy, but certainly a good spot for him to be squeezing here. But as nice as my hand is, just playing a kind of 3-bet pot out of position with 30x, I decide to take the nifty route here rather than kind of rep exactly what I have, other than kind of pocket 9s. That's going to be the hand that I call and defend to a 3-bet here. I mean, I could call. If I was a bit deeper, I'd be happier calling, but I think that this kind of shallow, we're just really not going to want to make a kind of 1-pair kind of hand and let this guy play pretty perfectly against us. So I decided to get out of the way. Now we move tables, and under the gun +1 shoves 9 big blinds. I think that he will be shoving with all kind of king 7 suited and better, so I think that we definitely got a good enough hand to call. We do see ace 10, and sadly don't get there. Probably I'd probably call with king jack. I think would probably be the weakest hand I call there, so near the bottom of our range, but I don't think to a 9 big blind open we can fold. 9 big blind shove, we can fold. Here, just fairly easy reshove, I think, with the king 10 off for 17 or so big blinds. We get it through. Here I could go for sort of an undergun +1 steal, but I think that my stack is just a bit too vulnerable with pretty much everyone, with the exception of these two, being reshove stacks. I think that that's a bit too many for me to be opening the 8-9 suited here. If I had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 more, I'd be fine with that. But in this situation, decide to fold. I assume we just get a walk. Decide to just open the 7-9 suited. Could possibly just open shove. That's probably still profitable, just about. Yeah, I mean, against what calling ranges they have, I expect them to be calling with probably king jack and better. So I think this is certainly a profitable shove, but I think that we can still just raise fold and do take them down. We're certainly going to be inducing like ace-9 and better there, so we have a decent inducing range too. We just make an open there with the queen-9 suited and get it through. And here with queen jack off and get defended. And he check calls. Pretty terrible turn card. I think that with his stack, he would probably be prepared to call a second barrel of something like 6.8k or something here. And I think he would certainly, well, he should be definitely check shoving his flush draws on the turn here with kind of me repping a king and a king only. 3s and 5s, but basically not too much. So we do just give up here, and pretty bad river. Possibly an argument for bluff shoving over this small bet. I think that unless we know that this guy is pretty decent, this feels like a kind of 5-6 pocket sevens kind of hand. And given our stacks on the turn, we could certainly have not continued barreling a flush draw. So this is quite interesting. I definitely like a shove here a reasonable percentage of the time. I know that I don't in this example, but I do think looking at this sizing, he has to be somebody pretty good to be making this fifth pot bet, trying to induce a bluff shove from me, which if he is doing this with a king or a boat or a flush himself, I really like his line. It does give me the rope to bluff shove over the top. But I think that against most non-deep thinking or non-reg players, this is just going to be a fairly blockery bet from a 5 or a medium pocket pair. Although I'd expect him to probably be shoving a decent amount of those pre-flop. Maybe he feels my under the gun +1 range is a bit too strong and decides to peel sevens. I think that's definitely kind of in his range. But yeah, against a weaker player, I think that a 5 to pocket sevens is about average here. Maybe some ace highs, like an ace queen hand, is pretty much the same thing. But against a better player here, they could certainly realise that when I check back this turn, there's a very good chance I'm just giving up, and this is the only way to kind of get value by making this kind of induce. So yeah, an interesting bet from him, but we do decide to fold. But yeah, don't mind a shove there. So easy reshove for just over 10 big blinds with the ace jack off, and we get it through. Here with 3s and 14 big blinds, just over, I decide to fold under the gun. I think if I had around 10 big blinds, I'd be shoving, I'd be shoving up to 12 or 13 big blinds here. But yeah, I think the 14 is just a bit too many, and I think that something like 6s or 7s would be a fine shove, and worse becomes a bit debatable, but that's about what I think I'd be shoving with there, and not the 3s. Soon we get a walk again. Here we pick up the ace queen, another very standard reshove. and he was raise inducing with 22 big blinds, which I like from him. I think that in these, it like had he been maybe 2 seats before a shove, I think would probably be better. Maybe it's still fine to be raise inducing. Surprised he goes kind of more than 2 big blinds. Maybe he's trying to like force the big blind into shoving or folding pre-flop rather than he doesn't want to get flattered. So yeah, but obviously we're getting the ace queen in, and luckily for us we've cooled him and we hold. Pretty close spot here with the ace-9 off. I think I didn't want to shove. With only 3 hands behind, I think I prefer a shove here than a nitty fold. I think I probably was not considering shoving and was thinking about calling or folding. And if I called, I didn't want either of these two to get it in. I mean, if we call here and this guy gets it in, then it's a bit whatever, doesn't matter. So I think, yeah, my thought process was I don't want to call and get shoved on by these two and have to fold. We probably have to call this guy. We could probably just fold to this guy. So it gets a bit ugly. So maybe I should just close my eyes and shove here. I think we're good a bit too often. But yeah, I guess this is just a real stack decision that we do just get crippled if we lose to these two. But with only 2 hands behind and only kind of 24 big blinds, it's not like we have a stack that, I mean, we have a playable stack, but it's not exactly enough to stop me from risking these two having a hand. So yeah, I think I like a shove here. That's a bit of a mistake probably, and the 5 big blind stack gets a pretty big increase. So here we open the pocket 8s, and we get reshoved on and reshoved on again. This would have been a close spot had this guy not called. When this guy calls off here, I think it's a pretty easy fold, but I think it's probably just a fold anyway. I think that he could be doing this with aces rather than... Would he do this with aces or would he 3-bet? That's really the question, I guess. If all of his sort of jacks plus 3-bet call, then we obviously have a snap. But I think we have just about a short enough stack that I think our stack is such that his smaller pairs, I really hate to shove, with maybe the exception of 7s. Okay, that's probably the way to look at it. Like, what should he be getting in that we beat? But yeah, if he is inducing everything better, then maybe it becomes a bit closer as he's kind of overcard heavy, or his range is overcard heavy. So yeah, I do think though that this would be a pretty bad shove with 6s. So yeah, and I do think he could just be doing this with 9s, 10s, jacks. Probably not aces. I think he could just make it 11 something with aces, kings, queens. So yeah, pretty close situation, but I think I probably would have folded anyway to this shove without this, but with this it's obviously an easy shove. And we see 5s, and I really, really don't like this. It would have possibly got me off 8s, probably in this situation, but I think that's only because I think this is a pretty terrible shove. When I'm opening here with 4 reshove stacks, 5 reshove stacks behind me from this stack size, I just think that 5s don't do too well. I definitely wouldn't have been folding better than this. So yeah, I'm not too keen on this shove here. And the jacks hold. And we're off again, and still folding away. Here we get the king jack off, and just take the blinds. Assuming we get another walk, getting a lot of walks in this tournament. Pretty close situation here with the king queen off. This is the kind of interesting stack, I think, because do we want to raise call and see ace x suited a decent amount, or do we want to open shove and get him off those hands? If I will just get this guy's stats up, or both of these guys' stats up, because I think they're fairly relevant. If they are